So, hello guys, and welcome to this session where we're going to talk about APIs of some of Sitecore products. Like, I won't have time to cover all of them, like how these APIs work, how they work together, and how we could use them as partners, customers, developers, and like any Sitecore user. And we'll focus on practicality, like what we can use today to build some custom UIs, dashboards, integrations, and yeah, how they just can make our life easier. Quickly about myself, I'm Alex Doroshenko. I'm with Sitecore for long 15 years, lots of time. Different roles, different positions, but something they all had in common for all these 15 years. I've been building sites using Sitecore CMS, so mostly CMS experience. Currently, team lead and principal developer at the demo team. So our team is responsible for the actual demos and the demo infrastructure. So demo portal, it's happy to answer any questions about it. What else? Some of you might have seen me at SUGCON Berlin 2018, I believe. So this is my second SUGCON. Apart from that, I live in Ottawa, Canada for the past 4 years, previously in Ukraine. And you might look at the last name and like, hey, Doroshenko, did you respond to my support ticket? And no, I did not. Like, that was actually my brother Michael Doroshenko, who also works for Sitecore for quite a long time. So no, another Doroshenko. So today's agenda, we'll quickly go over important parts like authentication, what it looks like today, and take a look at a few products like XM Cloud, components, embedded personalize, which is like interesting name, right? And like, of course, there's something about API or AI, like AI slide, mandatory now. But first, like, why API? And first of all, like, I love automating things, so API for me is like everything. But also, our job at the demo team's never been easy, even with like one product or XMXP. We were building demos, building these integrations, building infrastructure to host it as well and deploy it. And you can imagine that this job got harder when Sitecore released like 11 like products. And like, if there was no API and if we couldn't use automation, we'd have to have, I don't know, like 11 demo teams. But it's still one demo team that does all the demos for all the products, thanks to, in part, this API and automation capabilities of those products. And this is how demo portal like actually works. So the guy in the middle is the demo portal, this orchestrator, whatever you call it. And his job is to set the tempo and define like when each musician is to start and stop playing. And in this case, musicians are like different composable products. They just need to know like what to play, when to do it. And as an example, in case like you're deploying some composable system, like if you deploy an XM Cloud, want to integrate with Content Hub, you first need to deploy Content Hub. When it's ready, you have that environment variables, you can deploy XM Cloud. Then if you want to deploy to Vercel, you first need to wait till XM Cloud is deployed, it finished publishing content to Edge, and just then you can deploy to Vercel. And like getting more technical here, this is like rough representation of XM Cloud Play Summit demo that you can deploy from the demo portal. And it calls like 10 or more different API endpoints from different products to deploy this single demo. And I counted like roughly 135 API calls are executed through some many products to deploy a single demo. And this is done when you deploy from a demo portal. And most of you like who deployed something from the demo portal probably deployed like one demo. But what we also maintain and kind of allow more scale to it, we also work with the training team so that they can deploy. And like they can deploy, we have additional features to deploy multiple demos at once, like 10 instances of XM Cloud Play Summit. And that would be like thousands of API calls. And each of these API calls saves on this just manual jobs that someone had to do before, and we'll just automate it and make it possible in a few clicks. This guy, his famous API mandate, and I like it a lot, about APIs, that everyone should have their APIs exposed, and especially number 5, where teams must plan and design to be able to expose interface to developers in the outside world, no exceptions. It's a bit offensive, right? Especially threatening to fire people, if they do. But the demo team, it's different. We're like that. We work with multiple products because we use all of the products of Sitecore. And we're like, hey, teams, hey, guys, please expose the data. Please, let's do that. We're certainly not threatening to fire anyone. We're just have meetings with them and show them the benefits of exposing these APIs. So you might ask, how do the products stack up? Are they all the same in terms of this API maturity? Do they all have APIs even? And the answer is, of course, not. And it's actually a good thing, and I will explain why later. And just one kind of example from the real life, when Sitecore acquired Boxever, this small Dublin company, I was like, well, it's okay, it's personalization, you have flows, you have guest extensions, something profile cards. We could work with that as a demo team, right? We could integrate it into the demo easily, but then I started to research more deeply into the product, and I'm like, wait, what do you mean there's no packaging? You cannot package something and deploy somewhere, or there's no serialization API, and it was eye-opening for me because, and the moment when I also started again to appreciate all the good things Sitecore has with all of its serialization, packaging, Sitecore PowerShell extensions. Those are just beautiful for your developer productivity and for automation. And I've included some of the products which we recently worked with, and you can see that some have different authentication methods. Some have also CLI that you could use to some extent to automate. Some just API. Not all of them have API docs. And I will talk about those products as well, but disclaimer is that if they don't have API docs, you also don't get support for those products. You could see with today's headless systems, you could see just plug into a browser and see how things work, and kind of reverse engineer it and see how it works. But yeah, I wouldn't build something mission critical based on those reverse engineering. And use cases for, I'm talking about specifically kind of developer-focused APIs, but use cases for them could be waking up your fully configured composable project. You build something amazing with Composable, it's all connected, but what do you do? Do you always keep it running if you want to sometimes show it to the clients? Or that could be expensive. That could be, you might run out of slots on XM Cloud to keep it all running all the time. You could maybe back up, restore later. Deploying some composable projects that you build to the demo portal. So what many people don't realize is that demo portal and these demo types you can deploy there, it's not just for pre-built Play Summit demo or some other demos that we call. There is GitHub integration that you can change, pick your own repo. And in fact, it could be your company Summit, not Play Summit, or not Summit at all. Basically, the repo needs to follow some certain structure so it gets deployed, but it could be your project, not related to Play Summit at all, still deployed to demo, Sitecore demo infrastructure through the demo portal. Custom UIs and kind of dashboards for your use cases. There have been a couple of times when I was asked in previous roles to build some dashboard for C-level executives that would pull some data from Sitecore, from email automation products, from Sitecore CMS, and from others, some metrics. Maybe your CMO wants to see what's the average email open rate. You could grab this data from Send, for example. And general automation. And if there is an API, you could ask AI to do the job. AI wouldn't log into your Sitecore instance, but like if there is an API, you can find some way to talk to it. Great code, love it a lot. And with composable systems, you can see it even more, that organizations are constrained to design systems which are a copy of communication structures in the organization. Like with multiple products that Sitecore has, they kind of like reflect the, how the company is built, how this communication works. And it may be like some small side effect, but I also believe that when we as a demo team like approach these teams and try to make sure that products and their APIs work better with each other, we kind of positively, even like a little bit improve the positive effects entire organization as well. So the best thing about Sitecore Composable and its APIs in this composable world is that it's all under one umbrella of authentication. And I really love how it's architected and built, because it's basically one way to authenticate all Sitecore products. It's all industry standard. It's OAuth2. You have JSON web tokens. Like whatever product you log into, you could explore like how these tokens work. So again, same authentication across all products. But what's also important, it doesn't mean that if you go to a browser, like explore like how this network calls work and just copy some token, it doesn't mean that you can get the same kind of JSON web token and get it to work with all different products. Just like you probably don't have the same key to your car, house, office. It's different keys. It's the same kind of approach, but the keys and these tokens that are generated, they're different. Also important to note, like if you explore how certain API works, and like you could decode this JSON web token and you'd see some, it's structure, things like scope. Does this work? Yeah, like scopes. They don't always tell you what you can use this API token for. So if you're exploring something that doesn't work and you see like, hey, I have a scope that says this token should have access to something, it could happen, and happened to us quite a few times, when some products require some additional attributes in a token. Like in this example, you see like this CDP client key or something. Like some products also need additional claims. And these claims are added when you log into a specific product. So again, it doesn't mean that you can grab one token from, let's say, Sitecore CLI when you log in and do anything you want with any product like you would expect if you like, have admin permissions. And you might ask, like, how do I get this token? A couple of ways. Most secure and easy to automate is use automation clients, is machine-to-machine authentication. Easy to automate. Not all of the products kind of support it. Not all of the products really need this automation clients because it's quite complicated. Examples of it would be XMCloud, Content Hub 1. You create this automation client, you get client ID, client secret, and exchange it for a token. And that token will work for a long time, I think like 24 hours. Can have configurable claims depending on what you require access to. And yeah, but so far, I think it's just XMCloud and CH1. If you really need to do some automation, like run some migration script or something, and if you see that there's no API key or like any other way to log into the product, so I think maybe there's like one such product, and maybe it will be fixed soon. You can log into your browser and like explore network calls and copy that same tokens that your browser uses. And it's usually going to be valid for 20 minutes, but there are also like workarounds. You'll see refresh token in it, you can exchange it, and basically like any product in this composable world, you could use this as a kind of temporary solution. Or again, if you need to run just some one-off job or migration. Or for some products, you don't need to get this token. Like there are products with kind of simplified authentication where there is just one API key. I think for CDP, you can actually like also create multiple, but it's not automation clients. You just create API key, components, also send. It's an API key that you copy, pass as a header, and you get access to all of these APIs for these products. So XM Cloud is actually one of the greatest examples of what is possible to do with it, because its APIs are open, and also it has this automation clients, continuous integration. But what is important for me, like person who like automates a lot of stuff, that deploy UI basically just wrapping the API endpoint, which is open and like anyone could use that API endpoint. So this endpoint like allows you to create and manage like projects, environments, deployments, like anything you can do with UI, you could do with the API. Use cases could be like you could build some monitoring tools, right? You could build some custom UIs and dashboards for XM Cloud, right? If you want to see like how deployments are progressing. If there is something that's missing in the XM Cloud deploy app, it's super easy to just build it yourself. Like there's like lots of examples. You can try this. You can even try this out this API like in the browser, and you could use and build your own kind of CI. And we've actually built something similar for the demo portal, and it turned out to be. It sounds like complicated. You could your own CI, but if you think about it as kind of stages or pipelines, so what we did, like we download the source code from the place we need to, and GitHub actually has this special URL which gives you zip archive of your repo at specific revision. You just download it, and it's again API compatible. So you could download this code, unzip it in memory. Like if you want some customization to it. And I think we did it recently for things like we wanted to run a build on XM Cloud, but not just standard build and deploy, but also for certain situations we wanted to include some post actions. For others, we wanted like to exclude certain items as resources, or like if you ever have to. Not that like everyone needs it. It's kind of rare use case. But then you upload it back to XM Cloud, and there is this API to upload array of bytes. It's basically your zip archive converted to zeros and ones, and start the deployment. And if you think like it's really how also XM Cloud itself works under the hood, right? It grabs your code from GitHub, or you could grab it from anywhere, and just pushes array of bytes and starts the deployment. So it's all open, like you could customize it. Some even build their own, what I've seen, kind of UIs using this device authentication, and it's kind of interesting use case. Like device authentication means that you could technically build your own version of Sitecore CLI and like still use device authentication with that. Even so, like I would recommend consider building plugin for Sitecore CLI, which is extensible, like and better way to do it. But it's not limited to device as your computer. So technically, you could build like a Sitecore CLI running in a browser. Like it could be like something like this. Like some build like dashboards that you could log in with device authentication and pick any organization you have access to in XM Cloud and like see some stats. And something like this is like even easier to build if you just use built-in automation clouds in XM Cloud, right? So just drag and drop dashboard, call, I think it's even like one API endpoint with recent deployments, and you get lots of useful stuff, like sometimes even more than is exposed by default in the XM Cloud deploy UI. Components. we've actually had some learning curve with it initially. Like, it doesn't have documentation, right, about like what API it has. And we really needed it to kind of be able to save the components you configured, and maybe then restore it in some other place. It actually has API. Like, you can see that there is a UI, and it interacts with API, which is internal. And there is new stuff, which is CLI for serialization. I'm not sure if it was like also documented, but it's there. It's npx fias, and basically there's built-in help, but it allows you to pull the stuff you have in components and push it back. And you could do the same with API. And they have very responsive dev team. Basically, this CLI maybe got created, I don't know, like maybe in a week since we've like talked to the team and asked for something that we could use apart from just interacting with API. So you can use it to serialize and deserialize styles, data sources, collections, lots of use cases. For me, it's important that if I build some highly custom component, I would personally like it to be in version control, that it doesn't get lost, doesn't get like overwritten by someone. And also, like, if you can serialize it, it means you can copy it from between the projects, right? You could build it in your Cloud organization of one project and maybe share it with a client, or just copy it from one project to another in the same organization. Or you could use sharing features, which also kind of exist in components, but in scope of like the same organization. Personalize embedded. It's interesting product. It's a personalization that comes with your XM Cloud instance, right? It's kind of personalized instance, but it's just for personalization. You could have full personalize, and that has more extended, like, and well-documented API. But this one is kind of simple, but still API is needed for, like, there is API to get those personalizations and kind of push them back. But there is a catch, like I will talk on the next slide. There's no automation clients. And what it's good for is serialization. Again, you set up some complex personalization flow. You probably want to like back it up somehow, or inventory of things like what pages do I have personalization on? Something like to extend the existing capabilities of Sitecore. And there is an endpoint, again, which is not documented, not officially supported, and not something for mission-critical projects, of course. And you can see it all, like all of it is just you open browser console and see how pages works with this endpoint. And what you can do is like you can list all the flows. So flow is kind of gathering of all personalization variants and how it's set up for a specific page, for a specific item in XM Cloud. You can get the details of this flow and basically all variants of the specific page or item in Sitecore. They're stored in the same kind of flow and personalize, which is in fact like just a JSON, big JSON file that you could, again, you can save it locally, back it up. You could browse them and search them. You could kind of audit personalization rules, like, and what is not possible, like out of the box. You could, and it's a very valid request from marketers often, like what pages do I have personalization on? Or what pages use geo IP-based personalization, or something like this. You could also add AI to the mix if you have API. Like you could ask AI to like do some updates to this JSON and push it back, and you'd have like personalization with a bit of AI. Moosend, which is like, yeah, like Moosend or Send. The good thing about it is that API docs that we have, they pretty much work for most products, like something described here and there, but it's pretty well documented. It's got single API key to control everything. Like if you log into send, there is a section where you have that API key, and it gives you access to everything. Like everything you could do as in a UI as an admin, you can do that with that API key. Again, really good API docs and reference with examples. Moose and docs are also helpful. I think they reference the same API endpoint in the end. You could serialize and deserialize any content, like campaigns, mailing lists, and it's got really human-readable JSON. Like when we started working with serialization, I was like, okay, it's really logical. Like there is a campaign, it has subject, it has this and that property, and use cases could be like just backing up your work. Like if you build something really, doesn't make sense to back up mailing list. Yeah, sure. But it makes sense if you build some advanced automation. You build a couple of campaigns, advanced automation that gets triggered if you click this. And maybe you want to share it with a client, like you've built this whole thing. Like in Play Summit, we have a couple of examples of that. Like if you visit a page, do some action, then you'd get that nice email with a fish that says, like, did you forget something? Like some of you might have received that email, and more complex stuff as well. And forms. So forms is the latest, greatest product, and you can build forms. It doesn't have API, as of today, documented one, right? But again, if you look at how forms work, you could see that it's somewhat similar to Sitecore send, API calls and some endpoints. And it's basically, again, it's one big JSON file for each form that you have. And yeah, you could work with that. Again, if you use your personal token and call that API, you could grab the form or create forms by just looking at how the JSON structure looks for existing forms. Use cases, not user cases, are to import forms from external systems. Like a lot of people were wondering, can you just import my old Sitecore forms to the new forms? You could use the API. Again, you have to figure out how the JSON structure looks, but for simple migrations that could work. Also, copy forms between the projects and even organizations, because by default, forms are scoped to your XMCloud project. And as it stands today, you cannot just copy it from one project to another or between organizations, but you could serialize it or completely create forms from the API, maybe to sync it with some another place where you have your forms. And API and AI. So ChatGPT cannot log into your Sitecore instance and do stuff. And sometimes ChatGPT doesn't know how to work with certain API simply because there is no documentation. You see how it works, but again, not that it won't happen tomorrow with all of this stuff that happens with AI. Maybe it will. But as it stands today, ChatGPT doesn't know how to do it. It simply doesn't know what is personalized embedded. But you could help it by bridging this gap between AI and Sitecore products or any products. ChatGPT knows perfectly how to work with JSON files. Right? If you have a schema or give it an example and ask hey, add some section similar to this, or add something based on this example, and then your flow, pipeline would be you serialize stuff to JSON, then you could ask ChatGPT to do something with your content from different Sitecore products, not just XMCloud, but also components. You could ask ChatGPT, hey, generate something for components or personalization, or add Midjourney to the mix or something. And basically add AI to any product or feature if you need to, of course. And we've actually been building something similar in internal hackathon, and I with my team built a project that uses a similar approach to things to generate a website from scratch in XM Cloud with components and with personalization variants on the pages by just like asking AI to do it. And there's a lot more of Sitecore products that I didn't talk about today, but still like, they all have something in common. Like all of these Sitecore composable projects, they have this kind of baseline that they have API that you could use today, right? Yes, there are some nuances with authentication. Sometimes like it could be slightly complicated with forms, but with the rest of the products, you either could use automation client or use that fixed API key, and yeah, like you could do that automation today if there is something like that requires it. And demo team is kind of on a mission to improve it. Like so, we work constantly with the products, asking them like to expose more stuff to the outside world. And you can actually help our mission as well. And how is by sharing and showcasing your API integrations and use cases and like asking for things like, hey, like you'd like to automate this or that. And what is also important, and again, highlights that Sitecore is kind of this customer-focused and partner-focused company, is that partner needs and customer needs, they're always bigger than like internal teams or demo team needs. Like the number of times I've heard something like, hey, this is a valid request for the product, but you're a demo team, right? And you're asking it for potentially something for demo purposes. We're not sure if partner would need it. And that's when like, if you, that's why it's important to somehow tell Sitecore that you're missing something or you'd like some new API exposed by example, submitting feature requests. So each Sitecore's feature requests which you submit, so you don't submit bugs, don't just submit bugs to Sitecore. You could also submit feature requests. And all of them actually get tracked. Like if there's some internal backlog item, it will store a reference to the customer or multiple customers who requested this feature. And this really helps features get on top of the backlog and get implemented. You could also contact Sitecore demo team on Slack or myself anywhere, like wherever you find me. And a lot of this stuff that I talked about today, these scripts that show you how to work with components API, or personalized embedded API, they're in Place Summit repo on GitHub. And we keep adding stuff to this repo. And yeah, like so feel free to also browse it and contribute your examples. Like if you find a way like to also restore some additional data, like yeah, it's all open source. On this note, just wanted to thank all of the sponsors who helped make this event happen. And thank you, like all the attendees and organizers. Like I hope you enjoyed this session and found something like useful, interesting, hopefully inspiring you to build things. And don't hesitate to contact me like after this session, throughout the entire conference. Just come say hi or ask any questions about this presentation, about demos and demo portal in general. I'd be happy to answer those. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Any questions, please?
I've got actually 3 questions, but they're mostly yes or no. So start with the most difficult one. So you mentioned that forms are scoped per project, but in my experience, forms are scoped per environment. So I delete environments and all forms are gone. And basically, unlike components. And that's actually the question. Can we see?
Yes, you might be right. Per environment in a project, yes. So you're actually
components
right.
Are per project, forms are per environment. And that's my question is, when do we get this serialization option? Because from your presentation, I understand the only way to save the form is to move it to another environment and then back using this API. Because like again, since it's scoped to environment, if then you delete environment, you will get very strong feedback from your marketers or whoever build the forms, especially if they are complicated.
Yeah. Well, the way to do it now is to use API to serialize the form if you have to. It's probably like, what would be your use case for deleting environment and recreating it?
There might be some.
Yeah. Well, then, yeah, like now it's just the API option, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for this, but
Yeah.
going to the next slide, which was level up, you memorize it.
Yes.
Is it something can we do, or is it just what demo team did for yourself? Customizing that.
Customize, you mean like build
Dashboards?
something
Dashboards?
dashboards? Yes, you could totally build it like with XM Cloud automation clients, right? You get the keys to the kingdom, like everything, every bit of information in the organization, you could download with API and display it in the
portal.
UI as a dashboard. Sorry?
On the portal.
In your own kind of application. You could build Vercel application that gets this data and you have the dashboard. Yeah.
Okay. And the last one, it's nice to have automation and automation tokens to do this automation, but can we get actually these automation tokens from CLI somehow?
From CLIs?
Yes, not from UI like we do, but from CLI. Don't ask why, just a curiosity.
That's actually
because it breaks the principle of security.
So I would love it if all products had CLI as well. And we also requested, but I would suggest to, again, go to the slide with feature request to submit a feature request so that the product team sees the actual need for this CLI. So it might be that no one reached out and asked for it, and they just don't know that someone needs a CLI out there. That's probably the case.